Hi everyone and welcome to Bonnie Astrology. Today I'm going to be discussing the beautiful Libra full moon, which is happening on the 13th of April 2025, and of course what it means for your zodiac sign. As always, if you do enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you like it, subscribe to the channel for regular astrology videos from me, and if you want to follow me on any of my socials where I post more regularly on all things astrology or book a reading with me, all the information is listed in the description box below. So let's look at this beautiful full moon in Libra, also known as the pink moon. This full moon is going to be happening on the 13th of April 2025, and you can really feel the most potent energies of this full moon in the 3 days before and the 3 days after. The full moon in Libra is an annual occurrence, and it brings to our attention themes of partnerships and relationships, and most intensely it surrounds romantic partnerships, but it can also refer to business partnerships and close relationship dynamics of any kind. Full moons in Libra also bring into the focus connection, they bring into focus balance, they bring art, beauty, money. These types of themes come up around the time of a Libra full moon because the Libra full moon is ruled by Venus, and this is enhanced by the fact that Venus is going to be stationing direct on the day of this full moon. So these themes are amplified under the full moon in Libra. Now, a full moon in Libra tends to be quite sweet, it tends to be quite soft, it tends to bring romance, it tends to bring connection with others, and it brings into focus how balanced our relationships are and how fair they are. So because this full moon is ruled by Venus stationing, it is that little bit louder in its themes, particularly pertaining to relationships. Now, when a planet is stationing, it is very loud. We really feel the effects. And when it's stationing direct, it can bring an immense amount of clarity. When it's Venus, the clarity comes to our relationships and our connections, but also our finances. And 2 weeks after this full moon, we will have a new moon also ruled by Venus, which is happening in the sign of Taurus, and Taurus really brings the focus to our finances. So this one is more so to do with relationships. It is to do with the other and how we're relating to someone else. It's very likely that under this full moon, whether you're single or in a relationship, some relationship dynamic in your life is coming to the fore, and it may be centering around making a commitment or making a severance. Now, the reason for that is that when Venus stations direct, we get that clarity in our relationships, and usually one key relationship in particular. Venus will be conjunct not only Saturn, which is to do with our commitments and our boundaries, but the North Node, which is to do with growth and destiny. Both the nodes and Saturn are very karmic points in astrology. They tend to represent karma, and this can be a time where perhaps we get clarity on what relationships we're going to commit to, and we get clarity of what relationships we're going to leave behind, all for the focus of growth and development, with the North Node being present in Pisces, and especially spiritual development. Now, this can just as equally, with the Venus North Node conjunction in Pisces, bring around soulmates and karmic connections under this full moon. When Venus and the North Node meet up, whether it be through transit or whether it be through synastry, and if you don't know what synastry is, it's when you take two birth charts of two different people and set them on top of each other, and you see what planets and points connect with each other. Whenever Venus and the North Node connect, there tends to be a soulmate energy. There tends to be relationships that bring about a lot of lessons in this lifetime and are some way destined or fated. So because the North Node is so close to Venus and Saturn is there, this can bring in very fated partnerships and relationships into your life, and it can bring about the type of connections that really feel destined or really feel meant to be. Now, it can also be, with Saturn being there, that some relationships under the Venus retrograde have been tested, and boundaries may have been crossed, and dynamics may have shifted, and some relationships may have course corrected where they felt they were getting off track. They may have change the dynamics in order to create more equality and fairness within the relationships. And this may also be a time where some relationships are ending because they no longer are able to grow and develop, and the lessons have been learned. This full moon can also shine a light on any karmic energies we're carrying from past relationships or past relationship dynamics that are preventing us from connecting with another person. And this is very likely linked to the self, because at the time of this full moon, the sun in Aries is conjunct Chiron incredibly closely. Now, Chiron is the wounded healer, and Aries is the sign of the self. It is independent, it is brave, it takes action as a sign. And so this full moon can shine a light, possibly through your love of another person or your connection to another person. It can shine a light on the wounding that you have within yourself. So where you feel insecure about who you are, how you look, how you present, just fundamentally feeling a wound within self. And it can really shine a light on how these wounds impact our connections, whether they make us hyper independent with Aries energy, where we feel we don't need anyone and we push someone away because we're actually scared they'll get close, or whether it's that we're codependent and we feel we cannot be without another person, or we are not worthy without a connection. So it can, for everybody, it depends, where you're at and what your experiences are, what your lessons are. But this full moon can really show you through a connection with another person where you have some internal wounding, or you have some wounding surrounding relationships and connection, and how you can greater heal in order to balance. And what that might look like for you is, with the sun conjunct Aries, being a little bit more vulnerable about who you are, a little bit more self-expressive, showing up as yourself even if you fear you may be rejected for it. That can be the greatest way that you heal your connection to yourself, and also the greatest way that you find compatible people, by showing up as you really truly are. So there can be a little bit of a focus on our wounding with relationships. With Aries, it can be our battle scars, it can be where we took risks that didn't pay off. But, sometimes healing can come through taking a risk, and falling in love is a risk, or getting into a relationship is a risk, or leaving a relationship is a risk. So this full moon can really shine a light on those themes, and it can be very healing with this opposition to Chiron. Now, one thing that can feel quite intense about this full moon is that Mars in Cancer is in a square to the Sun in Aries, Chiron in Aries, and also the full moon in Libra, meaning that it is the focal point of a T-square. Now, Mars at the focal point of a T-square, especially in a water sign, can be quite emotionally reactive. It can also be quite emotionally impulsive. So there can be some declarations of feelings in relationships, declarations of love. There can be emotional tension at play. There can be some spats or arguments. There can be some disagreements, but these can ultimately lead to greater growth. And with Mars being in Cancer, these wounds that are coming up in relationships probably go quite far back. They probably go back to family dynamics, home dynamics, parental dynamics, with Mars being in Cancer. And it can also add a little bit of irritability to family dynamics at the time of this full moon. But sometimes this can happen to clear the air, to grow, to move on. And Mars is about to leave Cancer after a prolonged retrograde. So with Mars leaving Cancer shortly after a retrograde period, with Venus stationing direct after a retrograde period, there can be a sense of clearing the air to move forward. I mentioned the North Node being next to Venus and next to Saturn. The North Node is actually also next to Mercury, which will be direct at the time of this full moon, which can mean there's very destined conversations, there's very destined information. And when I say destined, I just simply means that it's leading you towards something. It's leading you towards something new, or it's giving you a greater understanding of who you are, where you're at, what you want. And these conversations can be felt intuitively. They can come through a dream. They can come through a sense of just knowing because they're happening in Pisces. They can be one of those moments where God speaks through other people, the universe speaks through other people, whatever it is that you believe in. And a lot of people can be really focusing on their spiritual connection to self, to source, to the universe, or to another person if it is a soulmate that's coming around at the time of this full moon. So this is a full moon where there might be a lot of very important conversations. You might have some very important ideas. You might have some very important realizations that help you get to where you want to be when it comes to your connections, whether they be business, whether they be relationship, a romantic relationship, marriage, spouse, best friend, whatever the case may be. So with that square to Mars, yes, there can be a bit of emotional impulsivity and there can be a bit of emotional reactivity, but it can be a full moon that brings greater balance to the personal needs and the needs of another person. So independent versus codependent, and sort of meeting in the middle to find interdependent, where you both have in a relationship, both people have the autonomy and the freedom to be themselves while also connecting and sharing with another person and taking them into account. Again, that doesn't have to be romantic. In some cases, this can be, business relationships where you realize that it's not fair, it's not equal, and you're choosing to leave that relationship because it's had its moment. You've learned your lesson, it's had its karmic consequences, and you feel like that time is over. Or, as I can also see with this one, with Venus being connected to the North Node, new destined partnerships can be entering at this time as well. It's also worth noting that this is the first significant Libra lunation we've had in a couple of years that is not an eclipse. 6 months prior to this full moon was a solar eclipse in Libra, and solar eclipses in Libra do tend to bring in important new beginnings in relationships, important new relationships, destined new relationships, fated relationships, and also just karmic timelines in our life, storylines in our life that do center around equality and fairness in dynamics, and also maybe pertaining to legal matters that could have perhaps been for you arising 6 months ago, or it can be to do with, as I say, fairness, equality, balance. It can be to do with the law. It can be to do with all of these different connected matters where you're connecting with someone else. So pay attention under this full moon, because there may be some culmination of energy, there may be some clarity pertaining to a storyline that possibly began 6 months ago or began in the last 6 months when it comes to new relationships or new chapters within current relationships as well. So as always, I'm going to pull a tarot card for this full moon in Libra and see what we get for just an additional message. It's also worth noting that if you have any personal placements at 23 degrees of Libra, Aries, Capricorn, or Cancer, you're going to be feeling this full moon most intensely. So, Six of Pentacles. This is about give and take. This card always reminds me of for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, and how we show up for each other when the other person needs us, and how that's balanced out when the dynamic shifts. A lot of shifting dynamics, a focus on give and take, a focus on generosity, and how we're taking care of each other, and also how we're taking care of ourselves. I think with this Six of Pentacles, a lot of it is focused on when we can be there for others and when they can be there for us. Sometimes the most important relationship dynamics shift when one person realizes that they were putting so much more in and they've sort of burnt out, and whether or not the other person can then show up and how these dynamics can shift. So it can certainly, around the time of this full moon, bring a lot of focus to relationship dynamics and who's doing what within them and how equal or unequal those actually are. So this is a full moon. You might notice more people getting engaged, getting married, making significant commitments, falling in love, or even breaking up, getting divorced, separating. These types of things can come up with a full moon in Libra ruled by Venus stationing direct. Very important lessons and events when it comes to relationships. Now, if you want to know what it means for your individual zodiac sign, I am going to be going into the horoscopes. And it will bring up the theme of relationships to all of us, but it may fall in a different house for each person that represents the relationships within that house. So it's falling in your second house. Maybe it's your relationship to your banker or your relationship to your finances. Or if it's falling in your fifth house, it can be your relationship to your romantic interest or to your children, for example. So it will be playing out in a relationship sense for everybody, but it will be manifesting quite differently depending on where it's falling in your chart. So as always, thank you so much for watching. We get into the horoscopes now. I hope you have a beautiful full moon, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Aries, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Aries, this full moon is highlighting your relationships. So this can be a spouse, this can be a romantic relationship, this can be a business relationship, a business partnership. It's highlighting a significant relationship in your life. Now, that means that this may be a pivotal moment in a relationship. Maybe you're getting engaged, getting married. Maybe you're leaving a relationship. Maybe the balance is shifting somewhat within relationship dynamics, because Venus, the ruler of this full moon, is going to be stationing direct, meaning that after a period of reevaluation and reflection, you are ready to move forward on something relationship-wise. Now, Venus is in the 12th house, which is to do with what is hidden. So that can be our subconscious, that can be what we keep private, that can be what we keep secret. So maybe there are some feelings coming up for you pertaining to a relationship of the present or a relationship of the past, or even the concept of a future relationship. Suppressed or buried feelings may come to the surface. It can also be that there's a secret coming out from a partner, or a partner or a relationship is sharing something that you didn't know. And with Saturn being there, you may have to figure out or refigure out with Venus your commitments or your boundaries within certain relationships as well, especially spiritually. So if you feel with Neptune in your sign now that you're a bit more psychic, a bit more spiritually energetic, you may be or empathic, you may be noticing that you're picking up other people's energy that little bit easier. So with Saturn in your 12th still, it's about asserting good, healthy boundaries with other people's energy. Mars, your ruler, is in a T-square with this full moon. Mars is in your 4th house of home and family. Because this is highlighting also your relationship sector via a square, Aries, there can be some tension with a family member. There can be some tension pertaining to a living situation or a property matter. Mars has been there and been retrograde since January. Mars is direct now, but this may have been a challenging time for you when it came to family or when it came to property matters. And this full moon might bring up your feelings surrounding what that Mars in the 4th story was for you. So any tensions about family or home. And there may also be a need to, it'll be easier for you, I think, to assert boundaries when it comes to home and when it comes to family because of the friendly energy between Mars and Saturn and Venus. So I'm really seeing this more so, Aries, as highlighting your relationships and it being a peak moment in terms of how you feel about relationships. Now, I also want to mention the Sun is next to Chiron in your sign, so your wounding about yourself may be coming up, and it may be because of someone else. Whether they mean to or not, their experience, their words, their approach could trigger some pain within you, but it could also trigger some healing within you. And you may be, especially with Venus and Saturn conjunct in the 12th, committing to healing some relationship patterns or beliefs that no longer serve you. So maybe realizing where you've been a bit of a self-saboteur when it comes to certain connections in your life. Maybe you've avoided them, ghosted them, or, you know, avoided certain topics or conversations. And now this full moon is highlighting what you perhaps feel that you need to change when it comes to your relationship dynamics. You do have a lot in the 12th house, so you might be wanting some time alone, and that could be causing some tension when it comes to your partnership commitments or your family commitments, Aries. You got the Justice card as your tarot card, so this is all about fairness and equality in relationships and getting things back into balance. A Libra person may be a key figure at this time for you, but it also just represents the sign of Libra, so looking for fairness and perhaps some sort of mediation between you and another person. It can also be that if you're going through something legally, it comes to the fore at the time of this full moon, or it comes to a conclusion at the time of this full moon, Aries. That's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Taurus, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Taurus, when it comes to a full moon in Libra, it highlights relationships. Now it's happening in your 6th house of work and routine. So this might be highlighting your relationships to your co-workers, to your employees. These could be significant people that are prominent under this full moon. A full moon in the 6th house also highlights your job, your work, and your routines. And the sign of Libra asks us to find balance. So when it comes to your work and your routines, how balanced is that with your alone time, your healing time, your sleep, your rest? You might be figuring out how balanced your productivity is with your rest, essentially with a full moon in the 6th house. But it can highlight working relationships as well. And it's interesting there because Venus that rules this full moon, and Venus is also your ruler, stations direct just hours after this full moon in your 11th house of friendships, teams, and social networks. So I feel like there could be a pivotal moment in your work or your job when it comes to a team, when it comes to your group. You might be finishing something, a project perhaps. It can also be with this full moon that if you're looking to get more involved in the gym or going to a fitness class or you're looking to improve your health, bring your friends along because they might be really good support systems for you under this full moon when it comes to changing your health. Maybe you're going to a doctor's appointment and you're bringing a friend along for support. Maybe you're finding that there's a job opportunity coming up that a friend alerts you to. With Venus and Saturn connecting still in your 11th house, you're really looking for serious friendships. And I don't mean that as in, heavy and somber energy. I just mean in the sense of, kind of ride or die energy with friends. You want people that are committed for the long run, that you both support, and particularly supporting each other's careers, supporting each other's goals. You have similar visions for the future. So you might be finding that if you're looking to change or improve your health, you meet friends along the way. You join up to a gym, you meet a lot of people. You might meet some people who could be in your life for a very, very long time. You sign up with a personal trainer. You might find this is someone who could be in your life for a very long time that might get you good results. You go see a new doctor. You might find this is someone who can really help you with a long-term problem. Taurus. So this full moon can be very productive when it comes to work and your health, but it is also giving the energy of getting by with a little help from your friends, okay? It is in a square to Mars in your 3rd house. So if you have any suppressed anger that's coming up under this full moon, jot it down, write everything you want to say. Everything that you would love to say but would be destructive, and write it all down and then burn it. That's very Mars energy. And the Sun and Chiron are conjunct in your 12th house, which can illuminate any stuff that you've buried or not been able to look at when it comes to unprocessed feelings, unresolved emotions, unresolved emotional patterns. It can be very healing for you, Taurus. And I feel like the way that you will heal it is probably by writing it down. It can, for some of you, come up in an angry conversation, and that can be less productive. Bear in mind that Mars is moving toward an opposition with Leo, and that's going to affect your professional axis. So I would be mindful of that, especially if it's a co-worker that you're angry at or something of that nature, or an employee. Your tarot card was the 10 of Swords, which is about letting go of all that pent-up mental frustration and toxic thoughts and unhelpful mindsets that are hurting you, and letting them go under this full moon. As I say, I really think with Mars in the 3rd, jotting it down and letting it go is probably the best part for you if you are dealing with unresolved emotions or something that you need to release. But I also think for a lot of you, maybe some of you are getting out of a job situation that's been a bit toxic for you in some cases with that 6th house full moon. That's what I have for you, Taurus, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Gemini, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Gemini, this full moon is happening in your 5th house, and this is highlighting matters surrounding your love life, dating, your creativity, your creative projects, and also your children. So I just want to start with children. There can be a highlight on your relationship to your kids at this full moon. They can sort of be front and center in your life. Something can be going on with them professionally or with a goal that they have. This can also be a pregnancy for some of you. With Venus being in the 10th house, this might be something that you're, putting out there to let people know. And Jupiter in the 1st house as well, it can tend to coincide with pregnancies for people. So maybe for some of you, that's what this is. For others of you, it can be your love life. This can be a very romantic full moon that highlights love, dating. This could be someone you meet through work, because Venus, the ruler of this full moon, is in the 10th, especially conjunct Saturn. Some of you could be dating your boss. Some of you could be dating someone older at work. Or some of you could be finding that you're perhaps going social media official with someone that you're dating, or something like that. You could also be, if you're a very creative person, Gemini, you might be putting your work out to the world, or you might be going in a creative direction professionally. So maybe under this full moon, it's highlighting a hobby, something that you love to do, something that makes you happy. And with Venus conjunct Saturn in the 10th, it's something that you want to show the world. It's going to be something that changes your public image. So you could be showing off a creative pursuit, even if that's not necessarily your career. You could be showing the world that you're more than just, whatever your professional title is. It can be that you're, posting something on social media that pertains to your love life as well, a grand declaration of love or a love commitment or something like that. But there is a link between your passions and your work. So whether you're dating someone at work, or whether you're beginning a more creative pursuit work-wise. It's like you want to share the love that you have with the world. It might also be that you're, telling the world how proud you are of your kids or something like that. I do think with Venus and Saturn conjunct in the 10th and Venus now direct in the 10th, if you've been reevaluating your professional standing, I feel like you're headed towards more clear understanding of where you're going. And, with Venus ruling your 5th house, you want to be doing something that makes you happy, Gemini, and this doesn't have to be your full-time job, but it can certainly be something that you're known for. So you're leading with your heart more when it comes to your career. You're leading with your heart more when it comes to your goals. Your tarot card is the Ace of Cups, which can represent falling in love, being in love. My cup runneth over, so happy, so creative. This could definitely be a time of love and connection with you. Dating somebody new, falling in love with someone. And this could also be someone who's quite successful in their career as well, if that is the case for you, Gemini. That's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Cancer, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. Cancer, this full moon is happening in your home sector. So this is to do with your home, your living situation, your properties, and it's also to do with your family. So all of these themes are front and center for you at this time. So this can coincide with a move, this can coincide with a renovation, this can coincide with a peak moment in your family life, with a family member. Your relationship to your family is highlighted at this time, but it can also be your relationship to roommates if you have them as well. So you're ruled by the moon, and you're also the sign associated with the 4th house. So you're feeling maybe quite like a homebody at this time. You might want to stay quite close to your home. You might be feeling the need to nest. You might be feeling the need to redecorate, because Venus rules your home sector, and Venus is stationing direct conjunct Saturn that day. So some of you might be thinking, oh, I've actually figured out what I want to do. I've created the mood board, I've created the vision board of how I want to decorate, how I want to renovate. But for some of you, Venus and Saturn conjunct in the 9th house of foreign countries. Some of you might be thinking of getting a property abroad, buying a home abroad. You might be thinking of visiting relatives that live abroad, or they could be thinking of visiting you. But this can be a case where I think for a lot of you it could be the consideration of having a holiday home or something of that nature. But for others of you, it can be more so that you want to bring your spiritual perspectives into the home. Maybe some of you want to bring more spiritual decor into your home. If you wonder what I mean by that, look up Sophia Loren's home and you'll see what I mean. But it can also be that some of you are maybe teaching from home with the 9th house. Maybe you're taking seminars, courses from home, or you're the student from home. That can be something that's factoring into this as well. Your spiritual beliefs may be changing, and this could be changing your relationship to your family as well. I feel a little bit with Mars in the 1st house when it comes to doing something in the home, when it comes to, for example, your commitments to your family members, your commitments to renovations or moving. Try to check in with your energy levels a little bit. It's in a square to Mars in the 1st house. Make sure that you're doing well health-wise, you're looking after yourself, you're noticing how you feel physically. With the Sun and Chiron conjunct in your 10th house, the time of this full moon, you might be noticing some wounding or pain coming up with a boss or an authority figure, or if you're in a prominent position, you might be finding it you may be feeling a bit insecure about it, or you might be feeling a little bit triggered by it or by a boss in general with that Sun-Chiron conjunction. But it can also be healing. This can be something that heals your relationship to being an authority or to authority as well, Cancer. But I do think for a lot of you, there is this 4th house, 9th house connection whereby you want your home to be a more spiritual place, a more positive place, or you maybe want to relocate to somewhere that is, in a different country. Your tarot card is the Knight of Swords. So whatever it is that's going on for you at this time, Cancer, I feel like you, with Mars in your sign, you feel like you want to take action. You feel like you want to get going. You feel kind of hasty. But as I say, with it being in a T-square with the Sun and the Moon, I would just be careful of, overdoing it and injuring yourself. You know, Chiron can represent injury, so injuring yourself at work would be more likely under this full moon, so just be mindful of pushing yourself that little bit too hard. That's what I have for you, Cancer, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Leo, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. Leo, this full moon is in your third house of communication. So this could be a full moon that's quite active for you in terms of talking to people, phone calls, text messages, emails. They tend to spike around a full moon, so there might be a lot of communication with you and other people for some reason. It could be to do with other people's money, with Venus, the ruler of this full moon, being in your 8th house. So it could be to do with taxes, inheritance, insurance, that type of thing could be coming up for discussion at this time. But more so than that, a full moon in Libra, it's about our relationships. And in the 3rd house, that can be relationships to neighbours, to siblings, to cousins, to aunts, to uncles. And it can just be how you communicate in your relationships more generally. So with Venus being conjunct Saturn in the 8th house, a lot of you, especially with the North Node there, Leo, a lot of you are leaning into greater intimacy and vulnerability with other people. And that can be sharing your emotions, that can be sharing your wants, your needs, your desires, your hopes, your aspirations, talking about your past, opening up emotionally. A lot of you are really focused in that direction, especially because Saturn actually rules your relationships. So with Venus stationing direct conjunct Saturn, and Venus being a communicative planet for you, it also rules your career. Leo, it can be that you are talking to a partner or a significant person in your life very openly about your goals, about your wants, about your needs, about your finances. You're sort of opening up to somebody else, or you're pushing for greater intimacy in your connections. You're looking for more depth in your relationships. And also with the full moon in Libra, you're talking about what's fair and what's not, what's balanced and what's not. Who says what? With it being Venus being in the 8th house, there can also be crisis talks for some of you at this time, where you think, we really need to get this sorted out. It's now or never. Venus is now direct, and so it's time to discuss these issues, or, you know, talking about the things you don't always want to talk about, like inheritance, like tax, like that kind of thing could be up for discussion under a full moon like this. But it can lead to a bit of a relief and clarity moving forward if that's something that you're doing. I think for a lot of you, you're also just wanting to say what you actually really want to say, you know, just not holding it back as much. And you're feeling very much like you need to say the thing. For some of you, this can also be learning. You could be taking a course, you could be taking a workshop. And for some of you, you could be taking a short trip, maybe with a partner, maybe to sort out something financially. Or you could just be taking a romantic trip with a partner to sort of restore the closeness with you and another person. Your tarot card, Leo, was the Lovers, which is all about intimacy and connection. So under this full moon, I feel like you're focusing on your love language, whatever that may be, in your partner's love language if you have one, or what you would want from a partner, especially when it comes to communication, you know, what you would want to be able to discuss openly, or you're just finding maybe if it's not a romantic partner, there is someone that you're able to discuss things with quite openly, and it's maybe quite refreshing and quite healing for you at this time, Leo. The Sun and Chiron are conjunct in your 9th house, so for some of you, you could be healing your relationship to religion or your beliefs at this time as well, through open and honest conversations with somebody else. That's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Virgo, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Virgo, this full moon is highlighting your 2nd house of finances, and in the sign of Libra, a full moon highlights our relationships. So this is your relationship to money that's being highlighted, your relationship to your finances, how you make money, how you spend money. And it's not just financial, it's also to do with your values and your morals, what matters most to you, and also your possessions. That comes under this sector as well. So your relationship to these things is highlighted. You might have some important realizations about these relationships. Now, it's ruled by, the full moon in Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus is sitting next to Saturn. Venus is stationing direct in your relationship sector. So your money situation is being highlighted, and it is connected to somebody else. So this can be that with Venus connecting with Saturn, you may be making a commitment to a partnership. So say, for example, you're moving in together, you're buying a house together, you are getting married, your financial situation changes because of your relationship. Similarly, you're moving out, you're getting divorced, your financial situation changes pertaining to your relationship. Now, the 8th house is other people's money, but Venus retrograde did begin in that sector, so it is a wider conversation for you, Virgo. Your financial situation within a partnership or a relationship. This relationship or partnership can be business, it can also be clients as well. So with Venus conjunct Saturn in the 7th house, you've been reassessing and reevaluating your relationships quite closely. And if you're aligned financially, but also if you're aligned in terms of your values and your morals, there's probably been one specific person at least in your life, Virgo, who you've been back and forth about, whether it's romantic or business. It can be that they've maybe been a bit hard to pin down with Pisces energy, or you've been a bit unsure intuitively about a person, or it can just be that you've been reevaluating, your commitments generally. But now it feels like the reevaluation and the reassessment, it's highlighting what you truly need morally or value-wise, or it's highlighting your financial situation. So discussing money with a partner, relationship changes, bringing financial changes, reassessing relationships through the lens of if your values are aligned or not. Virgo, you could be making a big payment for a wedding, a honeymoon, a home with a partner, or you could be perhaps, as I say, if you're leaving a relationship, noticing the financial impact or change of that. It is, this full moon is interesting because the Sun Chiron conjunction happening for you in your 8th house, there could be a little bit of, maybe if you're in a relationship, maybe your partner feels a little bit insecure about their financial situation, or there's a bit of wounding coming up with maybe an inheritance or a tax issue, or, there could be some vulnerability there where you're just feeling a little bit pained by it because Chiron is there, but it also brings opportunity for healing. This can also be to do with intimacy in relationships, so openly discussing financial matters perhaps in a partnership is maybe something that you find a bit painful, but it can also be quite a healing experience for you as well. Virgo, your tarot card was the Ace of Wands. Now this is about a spark. With Venus now direct in your 7th house from the full moon, you might find that if there's a new spark with someone in your life, there could be a new relationship on the horizon. So for some of you that are single, Venus obviously being retrograde in your 7th house and then connecting with Saturn, you're probably done a bit of reevaluating on what you want. So if you feel that spark with someone and they tick your boxes, go for it. Similarly, for some of you, this might be a message to have a little bit more fun, Virgo. Whatever way that applies to you, whatever it is that you like to do, whatever it is that makes you happy. Don't forget that Venus is next to Saturn. Saturn rules your sector of fun and enjoyment. And with it connecting to Venus, maybe it's time to sort of commit to more fun in your life. Just, commit to more fun. If you feel a spark is something that you want to entertain or you want to enjoy, Virgo, go for it. That's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Libra, welcome to the full moon and Libra horoscope for your sign. Libra, you are front and center. This is your annual full moon, and this means that your appearance, your body, your aesthetic, your approach to life, it's all under the spotlight here for you. So a full moon in Libra represents relationships. For you, this is your relationship to yourself. So this full moon is spotlighting what you look like, how you want to dress, how you want to style yourself. You might have been reevaluating that a little bit with Venus having been retrograde. Venus stations direct a few hours after this full moon in your 6th house. So maybe some of you have actually been, going through your gym wear, what you wear to the gym, what you wear for your runs, your aesthetic when it comes to sports, fitness, that type of thing. But for a lot of you, Libra, and yes, under this full moon, actually, you could be investing maybe in some active wear. That could be something that's happening for some of you. But more generally, and more likely the case, for a lot of you, this full moon, it's ruled by Venus conjunct Saturn in your 6th house of health. So your physical body is very much highlighted here. You may have been reevaluating the things that you eat, the products that you use, the way that you exercise, maybe reevaluating your personal trainer, your nutritionalist, your relationship to working out, maybe reevaluating your doctor, things like that. You could have really been rethinking these different types of relationships and also your approach to your health and your well-being. And maybe going back and forth on it a little bit with Venus retrograde. Now that Venus is going direct and is conjunct Saturn, and you'll be feeling this really for the rest of April, you're looking to make some greater commitments to your health and your well-being. Saturn in the 6th house can bring challenges health-wise, so maybe these challenges have had you reevaluating your diet or how you look after yourself, or your routine has changed. But for a lot of you, it really looks like you're committing to something health-wise. Now, it might not be health, it might actually be to do with a job. Some of you are wanting to put your work out there, your services out there with Venus in the 6th. Some of you are perhaps looking to change jobs or negotiate some boundaries in your work for the sake of your well-being. You're really thinking of yourself under this full moon, Libra. It's really to do with your relationship to yourself and, figuring out how to balance your personal time with your work. And essentially overall just doing what is best for your health and your well-being. Other people could be a little bit triggered or insecure around the time of this full moon. Just be mindful of that. There's a Sun Chiron conjunction in Aries. For you, that's relationships. So just notice that other people might be a little bit, they might seem to be in pain. They might seem to be wounded. They might seem to be insecure, or they might seem to be kind of combative because of their insecurities. Just be mindful of that too, especially with partners, especially with your spouse. They could be feeling a little bit touchy at the time of this full moon. And there is this also, 10th square to Mars. There's a T-square with Mars in your 10th house. There can be work frustrations come up at this time. Maybe a boss is a bit temperamental, a bit irritated. This could bring up wounding you have relating to authority figures. You could find that you want to take action and make changes when it comes to your job. Again, for the sake of your well-being, there could absolutely be some changes that you're making to your job or your employment around this time as well, Libra, and really focusing on, how you feel you would work best. Your tarot card was the 4 of Pentacles, which is quite a stabilizing card. It's a stabilizing energy. So it's sort of about keeping yourself to yourself in a way. With the 4 of Pentacles, figuring out what you need is what I'm getting from this. Figuring out the basics. Sometimes we kind of forget the basics, and it's a good time to check in. Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? It's kind of checking in with the basics of your routines and how they're working for you, Libra, essentially. That is what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Scorpio, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Scorpio, this full moon is happening in your 12th house, and the 12th house represents what is hidden and behind the scenes. It's a very secretive, private place. And this is where we go to rest and retreat and relax. So some of you may need some time to unwind at this full moon. You might need some extra sleep, some extra rest. It's not particularly energetic for you, and you might be noticing that your dreams are more vivid. You're having maybe most of your activity in your sleep. Your dreams are quite wild or prominent, and they might be alerting you of what it is that you need to know under this full moon. Now, in contrast to that very private, withdrawn, retreating energy, this full moon is ruled by Venus in your 5th house of play and love and creativity, and it's also your children. So some of you might be, with Venus now stationing direct in your 5th house, you could be spending some time alone and dreaming of love and dreaming of what makes you happy and sort of getting clarity on what would make you happy, what you want in your love life. Some of you could be working on a creative goal privately. Venus is conjunct Saturn, so maybe you are committing to something creatively behind the scenes that you may even have, it doesn't have to be something that you used to do, but with Venus having been retrograde in the 5th, sometimes that's when you pick up things that you used to do that made you happy, So maybe some of you are doing that. But I also get the sense that maybe for some of you with the 5th house, so much in your 5th house, Scorpio. It can be to do with pregnancies and babies and children and things. The 12th house is to do with hospitals. So maybe for some of you under this full moon, there's a birth. Maybe you're giving birth. Maybe your partner's giving birth. And you could be spending time in a hospital because a baby is being born. Or some of you are perhaps, going on a retreat with a romantic partner. or going on a retreat with someone that you're dating, with the 12th house being the house of retreat. There can be as well Venus going direct in the 5th, conjunct Saturn. You've maybe been reevaluating on whether or not you want to commit romantically to someone or not, and this could be a time of clarity. The 12th house is about endings. Maybe some of you are deciding it's time to end a relationship, but for others of you it can be that you're looking to maybe end a pattern or end a particular cycle of relationships as well. There's a Sun Chiron conjunction happening in your 6th house. This is to do with your health, your well-being, and your work. You could be finding that professionally, maybe you're just a little bit, I want to say, I get the vibe that maybe some of you, especially if you work in an industry where you're very physically active, be careful of pushing yourself too hard and causing injury. You know, just be mindful of that. Don't be doing anything totally risky or doing something that you just know you don't have it in you. And it's quite an impatient energy, and impatience can lead to injury with the Sun Chiron conjunction in Aries. So just be mindful of that, Scorpio. You can also be finding people that you work with are maybe a little bit on the triggering side. They could be annoying you or frustrating you with this. There is a T-square with your ruler Mars in the 9th house. So some of you might not be feeling so optimistic right now. Some of you might not be feeling so open and adventurous the way that you would like to at the time of this full moon, and it might be because you just need some rest. Your tarot card is the 4 of Swords, which is about taking rest. It's down but not out. You know, you can take a break, Scorpio, take some time to unwind and take some time to recharge. And this is one of those moments where I kind of wish I was showing the cards instead of having a backdrop, but in this particular 4 of Swords, it's a lady sleeping in a nest and she has a little heart beside her. So I feel like a lot of you could be really, you know, taking some time out to reconnect with what your heart wants and what would make you happy. That's what I have for you, Scorpio, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Sagittarius, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Sagittarius, this full moon is happening in your 11th house of friendships. So friendships may be front and center at your life under this full moon. I tend to find when there's a full moon in the 11th house, there's usually some sort of occasion. There's usually some sort of party, networking event, a get together with friends, something like that. So there could be something happening for you socially under this full moon. And it's ruled by Venus conjunct Saturn in your 4th house of home. And Venus is stationing direct in the sector too. Some of you could be having because Saturn going through the 4th house can be to do with prominent moves in your life, big changes like buying a house, starting a family, that type of thing. Some of you could be having a housewarming party, or some of you could be having a social get together at your home. You could be having friends over to your home. Some of you could be going to a family event, some big social event pertaining to your family, your relations. Some of you could be hosting an event as well from your home with this 11th house, 4th house connection. With Venus stationing direct in your 4th house, I think for a lot of you with your family relationships, you might be finding that things start to improve if they've been a little bit tense, especially with women and especially with older people in the family with Saturn being there. But I think you may also be deciding, if you have a vision for what you want your house to look like, and you've been back and forth on it, you might find now is an easier time to get things looking the way that you want them to, or styling them the way that you want them to as well. It can also be with the 11th house. Sometimes we associate the 11th house with aspirations and our manifestations and our wishes. So maybe for some of you that's to do with your home. Maybe for some of you that's to do with a family milestone, starting a family, buying a home, decorating your home. The Sun Chiron conjunction is happening in your 5th house though, so your children may be feeling a little bit out of sorts at the time of this full moon. There might be something that's hurting them in their life. They might feel a bit wounded by something. They might be in pain about something emotionally. And it doesn't have to be a serious thing, by the way. I don't want that to sound scary. I just think they may be perhaps, something's maybe hurt their feelings in their life and it's coming to your attention under this full moon. But full moons in the 11th do tend to be quite social. They do tend to bring a lot of people into your orbit. So you could be finding yourself at a networking event. You could be finding yourself making friends through family members, or mixing your family and friends at an event. So maybe for some of you that's a birthday party or something like that. Your tarot card, Sagittarius, is the 8 of Cups, which is about leaving something behind. So maybe for some of you with that Venus-Saturn conjunction, the North Node being there, Mercury being there, you're moving, you're changing location, you're moving on from something in your life. Sometimes with 11th house full moons, it can be the end of a friendship, especially with that, square to Mars in the 8th. If a friendship can no longer transform and grow, it's just going to transform and end. So if you don't feel like a certain friendship can go any further, this might be a time when you're leaving it behind with that 8 of Cups. That is what I have for you, Sagittarius, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Capricorn, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. Capricorn, this full moon is happening in your 10th house of career. So there could be a peak moment pertaining to your career at this time. You could be getting a new job. You could be getting a promotion. You could be leaving a job. You could be putting something out publicly, because the 10th house is also to do with your public image and your public persona. It's also to do with parents as well. So there can be changes here with this full moon. Bear in mind too that 6 months prior there was a new moon that was a solar eclipse in this sector. So maybe some of you have had a goal in mind. It could be a career goal, it could be a professional goal, it could just be some sort of goal for you, Capricorn, that is very important to you. And this full moon is ruled by Venus. And Venus is stationing direct in your 3rd house conjunct your ruler Saturn. So this looks like important conversations at work, important conversations with a boss, important conversations with a mentor, important communication, like a text, an email, a letter, something pertaining to your career may be coming through in writing. You may be committing to something in writing with your career. Mercury is direct at this time, which is positive for contracts. I would say if you could give it a few days after Venus is stationed, that would be better as well when it comes to signing contracts or agreements. But I think for a lot of you, you could have been back and forth in an agreement or a contract or a communication pertaining to your career, and this full moon is highlighting it. So you do also have, with this Venus-Saturn conjunction, maybe some conversations coming up with neighbors and siblings. You might have to put some boundaries in place with these types of people. You could also be doing some training for work, reading. You could be writing something for your career, for your job. Maybe it's a novel, maybe it is a policy. It will be different for all of you. You could also be taking a course to change your life professionally. So maybe you're getting a certificate, and that's changing what you offer career-wise. Some of you could also be taking a trip for work as well with the 3rd house too. There's a Sun-Chiron conjunction in your 4th house of home and family. I think for a lot of you, there could be a little bit of wounding coming up when it comes to family members. You could have a family member who's feeling a little bit out of sorts, a little bit in pain. And I don't necessarily mean physically. With Chiron, I mean they could be in some sort of emotional pain at this time. They could be feeling a little bit vulnerable, a little bit emotionally sensitive with that Sun-Chiron conjunction in the 4th house of home and family. It's in a square to Mars in your 7th house of relationships. For a lot of Capricorn risings, there could be some trouble with your partner's family. Maybe there's some wounding there that's being highlighted. Maybe there's some issues that are coming up. Maybe there's some issues for you when it comes to, your career goals and what your partner thinks. Or just finding balance between these different sectors can be difficult with a full moon T-square. I would just say though, with Venus-Saturn conjunct in your 3rd house, your communication and your conversations are very important. Some of you might also be getting a phone or a laptop for work is another way that this can play out as well, Capricorn. But also, taking the professional side of things out of it. If it's just a goal, it doesn't have to be a professional goal. If it's a goal that you're working on, Capricorn, that you have for yourself, talk to people. There can be really good insights coming from conversations at this time. You can get really good information. You're probably feeling like you really want to commit to reading something, writing something, studying something. You have the mental stamina to reach a goal with this full moon. The 2 of Pentacles is your tarot card. I think a lot of you are struggling to balance multiple areas. For a lot of the cardinal signs, this is the case with a full moon that is a T-square. It can be difficult to please everybody at the time of a Libra full moon. And I just also want to mention that your working relationships are highlighted as well at this time, but most likely a boss. That's what I have for you, Capricorn, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Aquarius, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Aquarius, this full moon is happening in your 9th house, which means that it's highlighting matters such as travel, foreign locations, higher education, and also your spiritual perspective. So these matters are highlighted under this full moon, meaning that you could be traveling, you could be taking a vacation, you could be relocating, you could be graduating, you could be finishing your exams, there could be changes with a teacher or a mentor in your life, and you might be having a shift in your spiritual perspectives. Now, Libra full moons can also highlight your relationship to other people in these areas. So maybe your relationship to a teacher, to a mentor, to a spiritual advisor, or something of that nature could be shifting or changing at this time. And I think for a lot of you, with this full moon in Libra being ruled by Venus sitting in your 2nd house about to go direct, a lot of you could be finding some financial improvements on the horizon for you, especially if you're making some significant commitments or you are putting in place better financial boundaries with yourself. Venus conjunct Saturn in the 2nd house for you, Aquarius, it looks like you're making a significant financial commitment. A lot of you could be committing to higher education, for example. Some of you could also be finding that your financial situation is improving because you're graduating and now you're getting a job and, you're able to have a more solid or dependable income. For others of you, you might just notice that you have reevaluated your finances and you now know what you need to change, and you're noticing the changes and the improvements. Now, this full moon is in a T-square with Mars in your 6th house. Some of you could be feeling a bit frustrated when it comes to your health. Maybe you're just not feeling 100%. Maybe you're finding that you're sore from the gym or something like that. You could be finding as well that co-workers or employees are a bit frustrating under this full moon. Say for example you've plans to travel and you're taking vacation from work, and then someone emails you the day before you go off and says, I need help with this big thing, and you can't just leave them with it, and you're having to scramble to get this done before you go off on your holiday or something like this. Or say you're just feeling a little bit under the weather when you're taking a trip. That could be something that's coming up with that Mars energy coming in here with that T-square. The Sun and Chiron are conjunct in your 3rd house of communication. So Chiron is the wounded healer. You could have a bit of a spotlight put on your wounding surrounding communication. So maybe you feel like you don't have the words, or maybe you feel like it's hard to say what you want to say, or it's hard to say what you want to it's hard to say what you feel, or it's communication can feel a bit difficult under this full moon with that connection to Chiron, but it can just be exposing a wound that you need to heal. So maybe you're actually a great communicator, but someone somewhere along the line told you that you weren't, and you've carried that belief, and it's not necessarily true. But maybe you're finding that you're noticing in the feedback you get from a mentor or a teacher that you're actually pretty good at it. It could be something that's coming up for you, Aquarius. It can be highlighting travel in general. So some of you could be traveling under this full moon for sure. And that might be something that's costing you money, or you're seeing as a worthy investment, or it's changing your financial situation, or you're traveling to change your financial situation could be another way this plays out for you, Aquarius. So your tarot card was the Knight of Wands, which is actually a travel card. So I think this full moon for you is pretty on the nose. You don't have to be traveling literally though. Some of you could be thinking, okay, well, what's my next big adventure? Maybe you're looking for the spirit of adventure in your life, and you're looking to be more spontaneous, and you're looking to try something new and maybe go somewhere new, even if it's not abroad. You're bringing the spirit of adventure and why not into your energy. That's what I have for you, Aquarius. I'll talk to you soon. Hi Pisces, welcome to the full moon in Libra horoscope for your sign. So Pisces, this full moon is happening in your 8th house, and the 8th house is about transformation. This full moon in Libra is ruled by Venus stationing direct in your 1st house, so the house of self. So you may very well be transforming under this full moon, or it may be highlighted to you and to others how you're transforming under this full moon. For some of you, it could absolutely be physical changes to your aesthetic, to your style. Venus has been retrograde in your 1st house, so you've maybe been reevaluating how you look, how you style yourself, how you dress. things like that. You could have been going back to styles that used to work for you as well with Venus retrograde there. And you've also been reevaluating your commitment to yourself, how you set boundaries for yourself, how you look after yourself with Venus conjunct Saturn. So for a lot of you under this full moon, you might be getting clarity now that Venus is going direct on how you want to change your aesthetic or your style, or how you want to evolve. And it really seems, Pisces, like there's so much focus on you at the moment and who you're becoming, and this full moon could be a bit of a glow up energy for you. You might have other people noticing it, and it can actually be, you know, whether it's that you've been taking care of your health because of, you know, changes in diet or changes in routines. For some of you with the full moon in the 8th, it could have been work that you've been doing on a psychological level, and it's sort of showing on your body, you know, it's showing on your aura, your energy, and other people are taking notice under this full moon that you're sort of changing quite a bit energetically, if not physically, with a full moon in the 8th house. Now, as much as that brings a lot of focus and attention to you, the 8th house is about other people's money, the resources that you receive from other people, so loans, mortgages, your partner's money, where other people want to give to you. So you might be receiving something from someone else at this time, a gift perhaps. You might be receiving some financial benefit. Maybe you're getting approved for a mortgage or a loan or a grant, and you're investing this into you and your personal goals, Pisces. For some of you, this can also highlight an intimate relationship, and you're, with Venus going direct in your sign, deciding whether or not you want to commit to this with Saturn in play. Venus and Saturn are both in a nice trine to Mars in your 5th house, so I feel like there could be, you know, some positive romantic energy for you going forward, Pisces. But Mars is in a T-square with this full moon, and you may find that there are some secrets coming out, perhaps pertaining to someone you're dating, or perhaps pertaining to one of your children. And, you know, the 8th house can bring secrets to the fore. So you might notice that there's some information coming to you that you weren't privy to. There's a Sun Chiron conjunction in your 2nd house, and this is helping you address any wounding or insecurity with money, and also, you know, insecurity or pain surrounding your values as well, and sort of using this full moon to heal from any wounding you have, because with the full moon being ruled by Venus conjunct Saturn, really taking your personal needs seriously means that you will take your values seriously, and it means that you will, you know, want to be looking after yourself better financially as well, Pisces. Your tarot card was the 5 of Cups, which is always a card about perspective. With it being in the 8th house, it can bring up pain, shadow work can come up with an 8th house full moon about the past, about regrets, about what has been lost. But with the 5 of Cups, there's always the 2 cups there. So this might be a moment where you're sort of healing from the past while simultaneously leaning into connection. So maybe sharing your experiences or your, you know, your grief or your sadness with someone else and connecting with them a little more deeply under a full moon in the 8th. That's what I have for you, Pisces, and I'll talk to you soon.